Welcome to the Divergent Hope podcast. This is a place where we can have open and honest discussion about all the different ways we can explore our relationship with God through Jesus Christ. Hosted by Laurel. Let's get into today's episode.
So glad to have you back at the Divergent Hope podcast. My name is Laurel, and we have an exciting series to start today. We are focusing on the spiritual practice of play. I know that's probably unusual or something you haven't heard of before, but it's an important spiritual practice. It goes along with the spiritual practice of rest or Sabbath. And so we're starting this series with talking about movies as spiritual formation, and watching movies or series and how it forms us. We have got two great people to talk about this today. This is so exciting. I want to introduce to you Nate, who's been here before. Nate, tell us your title, because I
kind of want you to try it. I want you to try. What's my title?
Director of Communication.
Wrong.
Director of Multimedia and Communications.
There you go.
Oh, it's only taken me like 4 times. Every week.
Yeah. You got it. Yes.
And he is the best. He's the best.
You.
Yeah. We love having him. And we also have today Mike, our lead pastor. So Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Mike, and I'm the lead pastor.
Lead pastor where?
Oh, Faith Community Church.
Thank you.
The same place where you work.
That's right.
Hey, I work there too. That's crazy.
We haven't met before.
That's right.
I'm kind of thinking we walked by the hallway.
Yeah.
That's fine.
So, first question, as the facilitator here, tell us what it is, or how is it that you find watching movies or a TV series to be refreshing for your souls? How does that work for you?
You can kick it off, Mike.
Can I really?
Yeah, you can.
This is
He has to think about
true.
it.
No, for me, I think my mind is constantly racing, and a movie forces me to focus on the storyline. Mm-hmm. And as my mind focuses, it calms me, and then my emotions settle, and I find it's almost like a door opens up to the story. I begin to resonate with the characters, and if it's humor or if it's and uplifting, then that just kind of lifts my spirit. If it's more thoughtful and deep, it kind of calms me and draws me to a different place. My wife will tell me I zone out because it's a place for me to not worry about the world, but to just listen to a story. I feel refreshed.
That's a great, I love the way you explained that. Really very, I can picture just kind of the stages you must go through to get there. And then when you do, how you can let go and focus. That's
By the
great.
end, a little bit of drool is coming out. My head's on the pillow. I'm focused.
But that was good. Thank you. It was a good explanation. How about you, Nate?
Yeah, I'd say for me, it's honestly kind of the same. So when I think about Sabbath rest, a big part of it is getting out of my head.
Scary place for you to be.
Scary place for me to be, man.
Yeah,
That's right. It's always running. I'm always processing or thinking. So for me, even if it's a work day and I'm taking a lunch, I'll throw whatever show I'm currently watching on, and it allows me to just get out of my head. Stop the processing, stop trying to get ahead, stop trying to get work done, but instead just enjoy. And similar to Mike, it's connecting to. I love story. I love story. I love comedy. I love when my mind gets blown by all these different connections. But I have to be totally involved in the world to do that. And in order for me to be totally involved in that world, I got to kind of get out of my own. Yeah. So that's why for me, it's become. It's something I do on my Sabbath regularly. I talked about it a little bit in the Sabbath episode. I always find my show or my movie to watch. Just super refreshing.
Love it. That's great.
What about you, Laurel?
What about me? Well, I would say that my personality, I have been told I'm pretty intense, and that my personality, my personality is very heart or emotion based. And where you both talked about kind of getting out of your head through movies, I get out of my heart. I actually, can kind of rise up from whatever I'm feeling or the intensity of where I'm at and look at the story. So it has a similar, or I think it's a similar process as both of you talked about, in that it brings me up out of myself, and through the story, I can be like relieved of all the stuff going on inside of me and focus on the story and find it really refreshing or mind blown. I love that too. I love that, the box of my mind being kind of blown apart. Like, wow, I'd never thought of that before.
I read research once that said stories create community. They were doing a research project on people's brains, like just looking at brain mapping while they were hearing a story. And what they said that there was a synergy in the brain mapping where a similarity happened across the room with people. And the idea is that we all begin to connect through stories and create community. Wow. So we have the feeling of being connected to other people and not just ourselves when we hear a good story.
Oh, I love that.
I think it's why people go to the movies.
Yeah.
Right, we go to the movies because we're connecting with a group of people around us who are having a similar emotional experience. Remember, I don't know if you saw it, Saving Private Ryan, when it came out. You're wicked young.
I'm wicked young.
You're wicked young.
I've seen it multiple times. I did not see it in theaters.
Did you see it though? Oh, you didn't see it in the theaters?
I was like,
in the movie?
dude, I think I was like 10. There was no way I was allowed in the
Why would your
theater.
dad bring you to that movie?
He didn't. That's why I didn't see it in theaters.
Seriously? No, but when that movie ended, right?
Yeah.
It was like a tangible silence in the movie theaters, right?
Yeah.
And the emotional connection between people. I remember seeing it. People were walking out, and if there was anyone that was over 60, they automatically thanked them for serving, whether they did or didn't.
Yes, it's so true.
They just assumed, you must have served, man. I love you. Thank you.
That's right.
Well, I
It's
think
so
when
true.
you talk about that, I immediately think of Endgame, Avengers Endgame. And you know what? It's been years. This is a spoiler, and I don't care.
Stop it. You're going to make me cry. Don't.
So, for example, when Captain America wields Thor's hammer.
Oh.
And the whole theater, you see those videos of people that went viral of like people in the theaters like jumping and yelling and cheering.
I cheered.
Yeah.
I embarrassed my kids. I cheered.
Yeah.
One of the best things about going to movies with your kids is you get to embarrass them.
That's right.
But that's exactly that thing. Like it wasn't just like one guy cheered. Like everybody was going nuts when this scene happened.
I thought of the scene where he's kind of getting beat up by Thanos, and he stands up and he cinches his shield, and he says, "I could do this all day." Yeah. And you have this. You feel courage. Like it goes from a concept to an emotion that you can then resonate with. And as I think it's one of the things that movies do is to give you the ability to feel virtue or to feel the trial of the protagonist.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. You feel it. Yeah, it's true.
Laurel, for you.
You know what protagonist means, right? It's a big word. I understand.
No, thank you. Actually, if you could explain that to everyone else, that'd be great.
I can imagine the video podcast is going to come up, protagonist, with a little explanation.
So Laurel, I would say like, for you, when you say it's a way for you to get out of your heart, I would say I have a very emotional. I'm a very emotional person in general, but when I'm working, I get very intellectual. So when I am able to go watch a movie or a show, it actually allows me to get into my heart because I'll be able to empathize with a character. I'll be brought to a space that like I wouldn't typically go to.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, like it allows me to like, oh wow, like. I'm feeling this deep courage about something, but like I just got off a work meeting. Like I didn't experience any of that.
I feel like that. So when I have conversations with people, we're talking about topics that are big and important to us, and I may not get it until I feel it.
Yes.
And a movie helps me to feel it, and then suddenly I go, oh. Yeah. It's not a movie. Well, it is a movie, but I saw the play, How to Kill a Mockingbird. Yeah. Aaron Sorkin did the screenplay for it, right? Or the play script, whatever he did. It's a script, right?
To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah, To Kill a Mockingbird. What did I say?
How to Kill a Mockingbird. That's the tutorial.
That's the tutorial of what not to do, right? But there was a scene where Atticus is having a conversation with a woman. She's a black woman who's the maid, right? Yeah. And they're having this conversation. And he talks about, he goes, well, I always try to get in the skin to try to understand somebody so that I can respect them. And she looks at me, she goes, even if that means you have to disrespect someone else. And that moment made me understand race issues from just a tweak of a different perspective.
Yeah.
But I felt what she was saying. And by feeling it, then I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's what I do. And now I understand it a little bit better.
Yeah. So much about spiritual formation is not that other formation isn't about this, but is developing the bridge or the connection between the head and the heart. So it's interesting you guys are talking about it maybe in the reverse, from me. I need to get out of all the emotion, and you guys, that's how you connect with it more. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff. So let's deal with the potential elephant in the room. There are going to be some Christ followers who have a problem with thinking about how can you use your precious time this way, watching a movie or watching movies and series. And how did the two of you, Nate and Mike, account for engaging with such, using your time this way before God?
First of all, if there's an elephant in the room, get it out because it leaves a mess that you can't get out of the rug. So I just want to
I read a stat today that elephants have names for each other.
I read the same thing.
Morning
my
brew?
gosh.
Morning brew.
Yeah, I read it too.
Yeah, that the deep rumbling sound, they have names for each other.
Wow.
It's like it happens at staff too. If you hear me talking a deep rumbling undertone, I'm probably saying some names for you, but I don't want to say them
I'm
too
glad you
loud.
pointed that
so
out.
you're the elephant in the room. That's
I am the elephant in the room.
Okay, so have you thought of your answers yet?
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
This is a fun side quest answer. I think for me, like the whole, like, oh, that's not productive. Rest is productive. Refreshing yourself is productive because if you don't do that, you cannot be productive. Like you will burn out. You will find, you'll hit a wall eventually where you're like, I just have nothing to go on. I would say like my generation is big on productivity culture, so it's very easy to get sucked into like you got to be working, hustling, and grinding. And for a lot of times, it's just for the sake of doing it. It's not even like with a goal in mind. It's just like I got so much done today, and I'm gonna get so much more done tomorrow, and then the list goes on and on. But and so this idea of like stopping and doing something that appears lazy, even though it's not.
Right.
Is not productive or is a waste of time. And if it's refreshing you and it's giving your soul rest, how is that a waste of time? Yeah. If anything, it's going to recharge you so that you can go do those other things well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember for me, it's I think first of all, let's agree that people overindulge in TV and movies.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it can be a waste of time.
Sure.
And I get that you need to be sensitive to your own struggles. So like, movies that have excessive violence or language or nudity or something, if that's, you're not going to, why do something that's going to trip you up? So you got to know yourself when you're entering into that.
Right.
The journey really, because I always liked movies, but I never really thought about why until I became a dad. And I began to use the movies to help my kids to explore their own morality and faith. I began to ask them questions like, what were the choices the characters made? How do those choices have impact on the lives of others? And because it was a show we were watching and not dad trying to teach them something, it enabled a conversation. And I was intrigued by that. And I began to discover this concept for me. I call them breadcrumbs of grace, that God speaks through multiple mediums to draw people to come to know Christ. And sometimes I think movies and TVs, he puts these little breadcrumbs in there that cause you to explore, or at least give you a bridge for a conversation. Like we were talking earlier, the movie that started this for me, and actually started what we do, the whole summer movie series, the month of July at the church, we devote to movies that we then take elements of and have a discussion of faith around. It was the Man of Steel, the Superman movie with Henry Cavill. Because as I researched the movie, I began to understand that the original creators of Superman had deep biblical themes that they wanted to come out in the story. Whether it was Moses, who was put into a basket and sent, so Superman put in the spaceship, sent to Earth, Or El is the Hebrew word for God, and he was the son of God, and he had these powers. And there was a point in the movie where his father is represented by an artificial intelligence speaking to him in a spaceship. He's trying to get his son out of the spaceship, who's been held captive there, blows the side of the ship off, and Kal-El, the son of El, he falls out, and the director has him in a crucifix arrangement, hanging over the planet for a minute, and the father says, "You can save them, son. You can save them all." And then he goes to the earth, and I was like, that's a powerful gospel image.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was taught in school, like, listen to pop art or pop culture. It's the voice of your society. And I thought to myself, all the millions of dollars they put into this movie to continue the biblical themes, because you're the one who talks about the power of the biblical themes, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a resonant grace that God has left there that we could use to say, hey, let's have a conversation about that moment when Superman fell out and what that represents, and what do you think that means to you?
Yeah. I mean, I think of, you and I talk so much. I love calling out, like, when movies and shows use biblical themes, but tying it back to what you were talking about earlier with, like, emotion, and how it helps you navigate those issues of faith or morality, whatever. I think when you can start to make the connection of, like, this is a biblical character they're representing, and then you're in the emotion of the film. When we read scripture and you're like, oh, Jesus died for me. Sometimes when you're in church culture and you hear that a lot, you can be like, yeah, he died for me. I get that.
Right.
Like, that's a thing. I'm a Christian. Yeah, that's a thing. But then you're in a movie where you're attached to these characters now.
Yep.
And you make this connection, like, this is the Christ character. And he dies for all these people, and you're rocked by it.
Right.
And suddenly you have a new appreciation for the gospel.
Absolutely.
Like, you can understand the audience around Jesus at the time a little better.
All right. So I'm so old, I remember seeing Star Wars in the movies when they first came out. Right? And, Star Wars, the whole trilogy was a big deal, right? And everybody loved it. And it was about Luke Skywalker and Han Solo and all those guys. And then when they decided to reboot the series, they're going to go back, because it starts in episode 3 and it leaves you this mystery of, like, wow, what was the other episodes? When they go back to episode 1, it was a big deal. And Time Magazine ran a cover article on an interview with George Lucas, like, why are you rebooting this? And Lucas says, this because it was never supposed to be about Luke. It was always supposed to be about Anakin. He said, because I wanted to explore the idea, like, how could somebody who has fallen into evil find redemption?
Wow.
And this whole cover article was about this deep biblical theme of redemption. Now, Lucas is not a Christian. But he wants to have a conversation about redemption. And I thought, what a great opportunity to have conversations with people about this deep theme of redemption. And did Lucas really find the path to it? Now you're talking scripture with people.
Absolutely, yeah. That is one thing, since I'm the newest one at this table to the church, that we all serve at. It's one of the really fun things I have seen and heard in the last few summers of your reasoning for why we do this, which is, meaning having the summer movie series. It's such a great way to talk with not only your kids, but your neighbors, go to the movies together, come back, talk about it. And it's great. Well,
I always loved it because I thought to myself, one, it's teaching people a filter. Right? Just don't watch a movie, engage it. Ask these type of questions. And I also wanted to equip people to share their faith. So I thought, here's some movies. At the very least, you can walk out and go talk about this with people because other people are watching it. So now have the conversation with them. You can ask them these questions. The strangest thing I ever did the summer movie series, right? We decided to go with a streaming theme, and I did The Walking Dead. Right?
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I did. It was really crazy.
I missed that year.
I was like, because I was thinking, like, how are we going to do this? But it was so popular. It was like the rage everywhere, right? Longest running TV show, all that stuff. But they pull a pastor into it. This guy who has these deep religious beliefs into the storyline. So I just decided, let's talk about why would they do this?
Yeah.
So we did this, and then this teacher, he was a chemistry teacher in high school, he goes, oh, thank you so much. He said, my kids in the class talk about this show nonstop. He goes, I never knew anything about the show or how I could engage a conversation. He goes, this taught me how to have a conversation around this.
Very cool.
So we talked about zombies in church.
Love that.
Love it. It was one of my moments. I'm thinking like when we see the video, zombie head pops up at this point.
Yeah, you know what? We'll make sure we edit that in for sure.
That's right. Okay, so this is your opportunity to geek out on some of your favorites and why they're your favorites, what themes. I'm sure it's a huge question for both of you, being big movie fans.
Is this favorites like just generally my favorite movies, TV shows, or is it my favorites that have had like a spiritual impact on me, like
Because he only has one or two of those.
I know.
Yeah, no.
However you want to answer, maybe one of both or some of each, whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll say so. There was a period of time where I would watch The Chosen as a spiritual discipline. The Chosen is the Jesus drama. I think the director calls it a Jesus fan fiction, which I love.
Wow.
And I think all of us here have watched
He picked the Jesus
I
movie.
know, of course
No. Well, when I was reflecting, okay.
His name goes, I'm going to pick the Jesus film. Yeah. Mike, what are you going to pick?
Yeah, Mike.
Right.
Hey, well, you're preaching on it this summer, and I picked Super Mario Bros. So
That's right.
I'm just talking about The Walking Dead. He's like, I picked Jesus.
Good.
Whatever. Anyways, so I'm a visual learner.
He's not telling you that he's preaching about Super Mario Bros.
I just said that. I just said
I'm
it.
preaching on the
Chosen.
Chosen.
You're doing The Chosen. I'm doing Super Mario Brothers. Okay?
There you go.
Yeah.
So back to The Chosen.
Yeah. So back before I was rudely interrupted. So The Chosen, there was a period of time where I would watch it because as like a spiritual discipline, because like I'm a visual learner, and so. For a while, like when I read things, like I said earlier, like my brain is constantly going and processing. So I get distracted when I read like very easily, or it's, I'm following a story and I kind of got to do work to get into the Bible because you have to. Okay, well, what's the context of what I'm reading? Okay, what just happened? Where are we? How does that play a role? Like where in the timeline are we? Like all those, you got to apply all these Bible study methods when you're reading so you actually interpret what you're reading. Whereas the show, what I really love about the show, and I understand why people don't like this about the show. I have friends who really aren't into The Chosen because they don't like the extra biblical things. Like if it's not in Scripture, they don't want to see it because they think it could like taint the way they view it.
Maybe not legit.
Maybe it's not legit. But there's certain times where the show, they build out the context for you of what's happening. So, like, for example, I think is it Nathaniel who was under the fig tree? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, you read that in the New Testament, and Philip is like, Nathaniel, you got to meet this dude. He's the Messiah. And Nathaniel's like, what good can come from Nazareth? And then Jesus just goes, I saw you under the fig tree. And Nathaniel's like, you are the Messiah. Mm-hmm. Now, if you read that on its own, and Mike, maybe I'm missing something here, I don't know. But if you read that on its own, you're like, what does that even mean? But then there's this episode of The Chosen where they build out Nathaniel's backstory. They give you, like, he's an architect. He was just trying to build this temple for God, and everything goes south. He had his blueprints, and the thing falls, the foundation, he gets fired, and he's sitting under the fig tree, and he's weeping. Mm-hmm. And he's like, God, I built this for you. I was trying to build this for you.
That was a good scene.
He's like, do you even know I'm here?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so then fast forward, Philip's like, Nathaniel, you got to meet this guy. And then Jesus goes, I saw you under the fig tree.
Powerful.
And for me, it's not exactly what Scripture says, but I had this new understanding of like, oh, wow.
Right.
That is a wild way to look at that. Yeah. Or, and this is the last one I'll get to because I know I'm kind of talking a lot about The Chosen, the woman who bled for 12 years. They give you the full backstory of her. You watch her for multiple episodes.
Right.
And what they do a really good job is they give you how culture would have treated her. how they would have seen her. She wouldn't have been allowed in a lot of places. People would have been like, "You've made me unclean," and all these things. And you watch how much it destroys her life and how she's tried everything. And she's so desperate to be healed. And then you watch over episodes build up, and she finally reaches Jesus. Mm-hmm. And it is this crazy powerful moment, because you actually understand how significant this is. Mm-hmm. Whereas the Bible being written for an ancient Eastern culture, they would have known that, but 2,000 years later, like, we don't know that stuff.
We've lost that context, yeah.
So that's why I look at The Chosen and go, that's like a spiritual discipline watch for me, because it's like that visual learning.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah. So now I don't know what to say now.
Like, we can wrap this up.
The Chosen as well. I do love The Chosen, and I know one of my favorite scenes in The Chosen was there was an older couple, and they both had maladies. He had a limp. I forget what hers was, and Jesus healed her.
Barnaby.
And asked, was it Barnaby? And
Barnaby is the limp, yeah.
And Jesus says, "What about you?" And he's like, "No, I'm fine. I just really cared about her." Walks away, and I just love the humanity that they bring in for Jesus. Where he's like, "Wait for it," and there it is when the guy realizes that he's been healed too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just love, it's an affectionate presentation of Jesus that really builds affection inside of me.
Yeah, that's cool.
When I think, what are the ones that? What was the question again?
Just geek out on your favorites, why they're your favorites, how they helped you connect more with yourself.
A hard one for me, like a hard watch for me, was Breaking Bad.
Oh yeah.
It was to me, it was Shakespearean in its quality. Yeah. And it was the descent of a man into evil. Mm-hmm. He's trying to do this good thing for his family in a desperate situation, and slowly the evil consumes him till it twists his identity and his relationships, and he loses everything that he was trying to save by the end of the series.
Yeah, wow.
And I was like, wow, talk about a descent into addiction or into madness, right?
Yeah, wow.
There was that, Lord of the Rings. Because if you know Tolkien and his story, there was a lot of religious themes that came out. It's like one of my favorite books of all time is Lord of the Rings, all 3 books. And I never thought anyone could do a good job with the movies until Peter Jackson.
Wow.
And there's always that scene, the hopelessness of the Battle of Helm's Deep, and they're caught there. So it's the second movie, and they're going to ride out to their deaths, and it's going to be a song that they'll sing for generations. And suddenly the dawn rises, and with the dawn, there's Gandalf. Mm-hmm. And he's got the riders of Rohan who come riding down, and the way they film it was like, I used it in the summer movie series, and I'm like, after the scene was over, I'm like, that's what hope is. Mm. When you got this point of desperation, and there's no way out, and you think your story is over, and suddenly God appears. Mm. And it's with that sense of a dawn of new light comes from into your darkness. Mm-hmm. I may have even used the Isaiah quote, people living in darkness have seen a new light.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you get the hordes, the riders coming down into the hordes of the orcs, and it's like, the inspiration was tangible.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just thought, I've never been able to describe hope as good as that one scene in the movie.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, I have my non-super Jesus answer for you.
Oh, okay, good.
Stranger Things.
Oh, that's a good one, yeah.
So in the most recent, season 4 of Stranger Things, most recent one, I really connected with the character Eddie Munson, which a lot of people did. He went like big viral for his role. But he's a Christ figure in the show.
Yeah,
and
I remember talking about this. They
start to, basically they're prepping to go into this world called the Upside Down, which is where all these like demons and monsters are coming, and they're trying to take over the actual reality dimension. And at one point in like the second part of season 4, it opens with a shot of a hand on a nail, and a nail gets hit by a hammer into a shield. But the way the camera is shot is it looks like the nail goes into the hand, and then it pans immediately, and you realize it's Eddie. And I'm like, oh, that was strange that they did that. And then as the story progresses, Eddie and all of them go into the Upside Down to save their friends. And Eddie has a choice at one point where he can go back to where he came from, or he can stay and do something to save his friends. And so he sacrifices himself to save his friends. And then while he's dying, he has his little sidekick. I forget his name. His name is.
The guy with the brown curly hair.
Yes, brown curly hair, and he's like, hey, like, take care of my sheep. Like, straight up says like a Jesus line, and he says it 3 times, like
just like he did with Peter.
Yes,
yeah.
So his version of Peter, and I was like, and I'm thinking about this. I'm like, that is such a cool way to depict that. Like Jesus didn't have to come down. Yeah, but he did. Right.
Yeah, he
chose to.
Yeah,
and that's like he had a choice.
Yeah,
and he chose to save his friends. I call you friends, and so for me that was another one where I was like, that's such a cool way to like envision this story.
Yeah,
that's a good way. I think too the end of the whole Avengers arc, and I love the way they ended it, like the death of Tony Stark at the end, because his character goes through this huge transformation. He's hedonistic, narcissistic. He's everything, greedy and materialistic, all those words. And then you see this transformation of character inside of him to wanting to protect the world that he loves so dearly and the people that are in it. And then at the end, who dies? And the self-sacrifice has such a deep meaning, because you think, I can't identify with Captain America. I can identify with Tony Stark, Iron Man. And that desire of never feeling like I got the power that I need to protect the people that I love most, and the willingness to sacrifice myself for them. And that just brings me back to that biblical theme. Like I think you're absolutely right. Biblical themes are reoccurring themes in stories and movies because they resonate with our souls. And here's a self-sacrificing character like Eddie Munson who's willing to give his life up to protect what he loves the most. And that's such an easy bridge to talk about Jesus.
Yeah. Okay, this wasn't on the written questions, but of course you got me thinking. Has there been a movie that you two have really gotten into talking about, but you've really disagreed on?
Yes.
Ooh.
Which one?
Ooh. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
Whoa.
We disagree.
Don't go towards Rocket.
Yeah. No. We both equally loved the movie, but we both disagreed on what we thought it was about.
I mean, Guardians are my favorite superhero.
Oh, I love Guardians
favorite.
too. I love them too.
There's probably nothing I like better than Guardians.
But I saw
even way better than She-Hulk. I love Guardians of the Galaxy.
Of course, that makes sense.
You're treading on holy ground here.
But so Mike saw Guardians Volume 3 first, and then I saw it, and then he called me on the way home, and we talked for like an hour and a half about Guardians Volume 3. But I tend to take the approach of a filmmaker not being when a filmmaker has a story in mind. Very rarely do I think a filmmaker wants it to be subjective. I tend to think that a filmmaker has something they're trying to communicate. There's certain pieces that they might leave up for interpretation. Like I went to a premiere once at Sundance when I was in college. And
I went to Sundance.
I knew it, dude. I knew someone was going to say that. Mike's just jealous.
He's like,
he wants to go to movie premieres.
I'm the expert.
Yeah. Anyways, okay, you know what? Sorry I did something cool.
One thing you've done cool, and you keep bringing it up. We all know you went to Sundance, Dave.
Dude, my best friend is gonna see this and he's gonna rip me apart. He calls me the Sundance Kid. Like he jokes about this all the time.
Your door, man. We're taking off the nameplates. I was gonna go red Nate Killian.
The Sundance Kid. That has to stay here. Can't get out.
So who's
stay here.
Anyways,
okay.
While I was at this premiere, there was a part of the movie that everyone in the crowd was like, "What happened?" It was called A Ghost Story, and basically at the end there's a note, and the person reads the note, and then the ghost disappears. And they were like, "What was in the note? What was in the note?" And the director's like, "No one knows what's in the note." And I was like, "Okay, that's an example of somebody who just wants it to be subjective." Now, Guardians 3 has this very clear, very clear depiction of like a modern Noah story. Like he's going to just destroy his creation, what kind of monster would do that? Right. There's this scientist who built this world, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm just going to pull the plug and all these people are going to die. All these creatures are going to die. And so they make a note to say, like, why would somebody create something to destroy it? You must be a monster. There's all these God themes underneath. And so my interpretation was this filmmaker is trying to make a point about a biblical story and the character of the God of the Bible. And how it's clearly flawed, because how could a monster do that? So that, and I also kind of know, I think I've heard, no, I'm not going to say that, but that was my take. And yours was different. Yours was something about like, no, it's the conflict between science and faith or something like that. You were playing more at like the evil scientist, like you can go too far with either one.
It was the unfettered exploration of science without considering the implications or the impact of it.
Yeah.
And trying to manipulate creation to our own intent and ended up destroying it instead.
Yeah.
So we went in different directions on that. He was wrong, but it was okay. He was nuanced staff, and I was wanted to go.
It's great. Let's see how he handles this being wrong.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. We'll talk about that in spiritual direction. What about you, Laurel? What's like a film or a show for you that has been either a spiritual formation or like one that you just love to watch?
So many, but and this is the problem, is I don't remember titles. So it's
you describe
really
them, I might be able to.
Yeah.
You might be able to help.
Actually, there's one that I saw that has left such an impact on me. It must have been like an independent film years ago, and it took place in South Africa, and it was about this boy, well, probably 11 or something, but the end of it had such a powerful resurrection theme, and I need to really Google and see if I can find this film. It was so good. But things like, so when I was training in spiritual direction, we always had a movie night during our cohort meetings to really, teach us about how to pull these themes out. Not that it was hard, but it was really fun. And one we did was The Horse Whisperer, which is old now, but really good about listening and, how to listen to the Holy Spirit and how to be in tune with, another creature kind of a thing. But I love old movies. I love, believe it or not, I love a lot of war movies. I grew up with a dad who was infatuated with World War II. I don't mean that he loved war, but he was, I think, the heroic nature of war.
Like, I only watch war movies with my dad. It's the only thing I can get him to watch with me.
Oh, my gosh.
He loves war movies.
Yeah. And my husband does, too, and he's a military guy. So it's one thing he will stay awake for. But, yeah, I mean, Saving Private Ryan, oh, my gosh, just intense. But there are just so many, and again, I'm really bad at remembering names, so I'm sorry, I'm not very helpful.
I tried to, Google it, and, there was, 7 different movie options. We're not finding that.
Terrible. It's terrible. Yeah, exactly. Cool. And series and all that. Okay, so tell us more about one or two of your most impactful. I mean, maybe you've already talked about it, but for you personally, your most impactful movies or series, and how they have shaped you or transformed your life. Again, you can go into one you've already talked about.
Yeah, no, so this is going to sound funny, but Christmas Carol. Every year, I re-engage the Christmas Carol story through a different medium, multiple movie versions, books, audios, apps, plays. That story keeps me centered at Christmas time about the power of redemption, about divine intervention into a man's life that led him to a place of transformation. And
absolutely.
During a season where you can lose that, it is my spiritual discipline every single year to watch a new rendition of that story.
Have you ever watched the first one, the oldest one, 1930
long time
or 33?
ago. They actually added stuff that wasn't in the story that people think are canon. to the story.
Oh my gosh! Wow. Yeah.
You know, my favorite
What?
was
Which
the
one?
one was Jean-Luc Picard. It was like the perfect.
Oh my gosh! Yes.
It was my perfect combination of Star Trek,
Star Trek,
and
Christmas Carol.
But he's a classically trained
he is.
actor.
A great actor.
He did a great job with the character.
Wow. Yeah. I totally agree with you on that. That's a very, very powerful one. In my former church, I preached a whole sermon on that, which is
really?
easy to do, right? And I, use the movie throughout too. So we just did the summer movie series at Christmas.
I'm going to blow your mind.
Yeah.
My only musical acting gig in high school, I played Marley's Ghost, and there was a song for the character. They told me just howl like a ghost, and we'll figure it out. The person playing the piano, and like a third of the way into the song, just went like this. It's like I couldn't follow you. I had no idea what you were singing, so I just stopped playing because it was just ridiculous. But it was my one musical gig.
We'll have to reprise the role.
Now we know. Yeah,
so
that was
funny.
it. He had his
started my
15
journey.
seconds of fame right there. Yeah. Another Christmas one is Miracle on 34th, and this is why.
Oh, okay.
The ending of it, I think, is a absolutely powerful display of how we go from barely having a mustard seed of faith to having God just do it and make it happen, faith becoming reality. So Natalie Wood's character, she's the young girl, and she's asked Santa Claus for the house.
I watched it for the first time this past Christmas.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry.
Oh.
Sorry.
Anyway, that she's in the back of the car, I believe. That's literally how she's saying it, because, Santa Claus isn't sure he can pull this one out. Kris Kringle, excuse me. And then how he kind of challenges her about believing, and she doesn't, and she's sitting in the back of the car. I believe. And then all of a sudden, the house appears, and she comes alive, and she tells, her mom to stop the car. And she runs into the house, and it looks every bit like she thought it would. And when her mom and fiance walk into the downstairs door and they go toward the fireplace, there's the cane that Kris Kringle used. Right. And to me, that is such a beautiful example of how our little tiny bit of faith, barely hanging on, and then when God fulfills it, it is just, you can't even describe it. So there's another one for
that's
me.
Good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
I like that. I have one moment, one movie that I always come back to. It was deeply powerful to me, and people always make fun of me for it. Wreck-It Ralph 2.
Never even heard
Not
of
even the
it.
version. Wreck-It Ralph 2.
Wreck-It Ralph 1.
Not Wreck-It Ralph 1. Wreck-It Ralph 2. So you got to watch this movie. I'll tell you that.
I did.
So, okay.
I did not have the same emotional
Yeah.
connection.
Okay, but here's why. This was a movie that when I think back on my life and I think about moments where I go, God spoke to me, he used Wreck-It Ralph one of those times. I'm not kidding.
Well, he spoke through Balaam's donkey, so
This is true. Wreck-It Ralph, yeah.
I was going through a period of my life where I was struggling with control, and that is kind of the whole theme of Wreck-It Ralph 2 for Wreck-It Ralph. I almost said Wrecky. Yeah. For Ralph. That's like one of the big parts of the movie, and I didn't even anticipate this at all. It was just, as God does, he shows up when you kind of least expect him to sometimes. Yeah. And so I'm in the movie theaters with my now wife and her best friend, and the thing happens, and it's like he has to let go of control, and in that moment I was like, I am Ralph. This is me, this is my story.
Yeah.
And I started weeping in the movie theater. I'm bawling my eyes out. And I'm not talking like I'm just teary-eyed and a couple are shooting down. I look over at Emily and I'm like... and and they're like laughing at me, and I'm having
an emotional moment.
like my soul is changing,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and
that's right.
it was all like Wreck-It Ralph too. So I look at that movie as like a deeply spiritually impactful film that I watched at that time. Now, if I watched it again, I wouldn't have the same reaction, but it was
Right.
because like in that
In
moment,
that moment.
something was communicated to me.
Absolutely.
That happened for me.
Absolutely.
Animated movies, right? Puss in Boots.
Puss in Boots! Oh my
The
god!
Last Wish. Yeah, man, come on. So this was my cancer journey. And I've been wrestling with cancer. All of a sudden, it's not funny.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Oh, jeez. We gotta cut this part, dude. That looks so
You
bad.
can understand our relationship. That's okay.
Right there.
So my cancer journey, right? Because I remember, I've talked about this moment in wrestling with the fact that I had this aggressive form of cancer, with God confronting me with the question, why are you surprised with your mortality? Mm-hmm. And why aren't you inspired with your immortality?
Wow.
And then the third question was, can you find the blessings even in cancer? Mm. And the movie is about Puss in Boots arrogantly treating his whole life recklessly until he's down to one last wish.
Yeah.
And death comes for him. And death is very intent. Death is angry at Puss in Boots for treating life so cavalier. Mm-hmm. Has such a cavalier attitude. Yeah. And now he's on the run from death. He just wants to get that last wish because that last wish could give him back his 9 lives. Mm-hmm. And along the journey, he collects these relationships. And then there's this powerful moment. I showed it at church. And I remember this powerful moment where death shows up. He's got the wish. And if he says the wish, he can get his 9 lives back, or he can use the wish, or he could decide to not use the wish or use it differently. And he's trapped with death and the people around him. And then he looks at death and he just realizes, I'm not afraid of you anymore.
Wow. Wow.
And he chooses to confront death because he's discovered a greater meaning in the relationships. He's found a new meaning to life. And it's not about himself.
Yeah.
It's about the people he loves. And so he's willing to face death. And there's like a little bit of a battle scene. And then death at the end is like, you're not the arrogant cat that I once knew. Hmm. And death walks away and says, and they speak in Spanish and basically says, I'll see you again someday.
Yeah.
And then Puss in Boots says, till that day.
Yeah.
And it was like, it's one of the reasons movies are so awesome, right? Because you can watch something at a time in your life and I really felt like God in the moment for me, of like saying, you don't have to be afraid of death. Mm-hmm. And it changed my perspective on death. Mm-hmm. Instead of death being this evil force that's coming to take me, Christ, through the cross and resurrection, has changed death to an escort.
Yes.
Coming along by my side and saying, let me take you to meet the Father now.
Yeah. Good word, escort. Wow.
And it flipped the script on death for me.
Yeah.
And yes, I cried.
Okay, I've got one too.
Give me it. Let's hear
go.
And it's a Jesus
Is it animated?
one.
Is it animated?
No.
Is it Toy Story 3?
No, because that's not.
Oh my gosh! You cried at the end of that.
Who doesn't cry at Toy Story
True.
3?
Who doesn't, right? Yeah.
Oh, that scene where
They're all holding
where
hands.
Buzz reaches out his hand.
Oh my God.
Come on, don't get me on.
So good.
Change
I
the
was in like
topic,
middle
come on.
school, like making sure the guys didn't see me sniffing.
Oh my God.
I was at the movie with my son who was graduating that year. He's like, this is what's happening. I'm gonna go play with my toys.
That's right. Oh gosh. So The Shack.
Oh, love the Shack. So good.
But I had a very transformational moment in that movie. And I had read the book, I was going to see it just like, let's see if they, do it justice. And I tried to go with somebody and that fell through. So I just went by myself. And I remember it was a Sunday. I'd preached. I went to the movies after. And when they came to the garden scene where Mac, main character, and then the Holy Spirit, who is played by a woman, she's tending the garden. And the garden is this wild, deep, in my estimation, like a mess. But it was a garden, and you could still tell it was a garden. And I just looked at that, and I had such this transformational moment of that is my life. Now, I happen to love gardens. I love gardens. And I happen to actually love kind of messy gardens. And when I was like, that is my life. And, as she talked about what she was doing and working in the garden, but like also not trying to control it, not trying to tame it so much. And just the way she talked about it and the way it was clicking with Mac and about his own life. And it really brought me to a new place of acceptance for my own life, that it doesn't fit this perfect mold or anything. And it's wild and out of control, but God's working in it. And it's got points of beauty already. And it's just going to have even more. And I think it was just one of those times where, again, God used pictures, God used script and movie to really reflect back to me what he's doing in me.
We used the shack in the summer movie series.
Did you?
I was trying to remember it. There was a Casey Affleck movie. Came out about the same time.
Oh, it was about Marblehead, or was that the no?
Not Marblehead, but
no, it was one of the North Shore.
Manchester by the Sea.
Manchester by the
that
Sea.
One, right?
I hated the movie.
Yeah,
hated
it was
total depressing movie about a guy there was a death that he could never recover from, and the movie ended without real hope.
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
People loved it, but I didn't. But I showed clips of that movie, which was hard to do because of the language in the movie. Right?
Yeah.
But I found some clips I could use, and I compared how people without faith manage death to people with faith.
Yeah.
And I knew, I refused to read the book because I can't stand stories where children are the victim. Right.
Yeah.
But I watched the movie for this. I knew it was going to happen, and I still cried when they bring the child out, and the child's covered with a sheet.
Yeah.
Wept like a baby.
I mean,
in my office, so people didn't see me.
I think that's kind of an unwritten rule in cinema, is like you never show a child getting killed of any sort. I was at
makes
you ready
sense.
this? I was at a different film festival, Mike. I'm not going to say which
Another
one. Yeah.
My name's Nate, and
I was at another film festival.
I'm a well-recognized personality at film festivals.
Okay, so I was at this film festival, and I saw a film where something happens to a child, and people got up and left. Like people just walked out of the movie. It's you just don't do it. You don't show it.
Sure. But I get that. Like to me, that's
taboo.
That's one of my lines. Like I can't see violence against a child in the movies.
Wow.
We started off by talking. For me, I started off by talking about how movies are a way to engage conversation with culture. But we all just shared a movie about how God spoke to us through story.
That's right.
Yep.
Story is the vehicle. I think it's the dominant vehicle. Look at how much narrative there's in the Bible by which we learn truths.
Yeah.
Without having to be told what the truth is.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we first dove in, I was thinking about the parables. It's just like Jesus just like, okay, so imagine this story. There's a guy who owns a vineyard. Yeah. And all the time, we say parable, but Jesus
Well, in my Bible reading, I've been in Genesis, and I'm going through the story of Jacob. Manipulation, deceit, broken lives, and broken hearts and relationships, and loveless marriage. It's all in there, right?
Yeah.
Everyone can find an element of the book in the story of Jacob, as well as 3 powerful experiences of God.
Yes.
And 2 of them in dreams. And the third one, God leaves him wounded.
Yeah.
To walk the rest of his life with a limp, to remember that he's not in charge.
Yeah.
That only God's in charge.
Yeah.
And that limp is actually a gift to him from God.
Right. Oh, so much so, I think. Yeah.
We should make
That's
a movie
amazing.
about that, an animated movie on the life of Jacob.
I'll cry. It's animated.
But that's the point. We want people to cry. It's an animated movie.
Yeah.
Maybe Puss in Boots will play Jacob. That would just be like...
Oh, you're just casting other animated characters?
Why not?
It's actually a concept I don't think has been thought through.
Puss in Boots.
You just cast other
My name is
animated
Puss in
characters
Boots.
to make an animated
And I am
movie.
Jacob with the Bible.
So it makes me think of, we'll close with this, another spiritual practice that you two know about, Visio Divina, where you look at a piece of art, which of course film is art, series, and you look at it, and really what it does as you spend time with it, it reflects back to a lot of what's going on in your soul, because often you're noticing the things that you don't even think in the beginning are resonating with you. Maybe something really bugs you about it. And then you realize, oh my gosh, but that's what's going on inside of me too. And so very much in these experiences we have with a movie, with story, and that's what the Bible does too, and holding up story. So we read it, we see ourselves in it, or we think, oh, I would never do that. And yet that's exactly what we would do. It's just so powerful.
Absolutely.
So powerful. Thank you. This has been so much fun.
Oh, yeah.
Just
Good.
great. Oh my gosh, we can just carry it into the office now.
I know. That's the goal.
right.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
We need to have
and-
a serious conversation about Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh
we
my
do.
gosh,
We
yeah.
gotta put the nail in the coffin on that one.
So we hope you come back and join us on our next 2 in the series, looking at the spiritual practice of play. We've got coming up, we have motorcycles, so cool, and then also music. So join us for the next couple in the series. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for checking out this episode of Divergent Hope, a podcast produced by Faith Community Church. Wherever you're listening, we invite you to leave a review. We welcome all your feedback. If you want to get connected, visit us at faithma.online.church. See you soon.